Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast brought to you by Jack and Coke. I'm your host, Pete B, and I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse here. Sam, are you nice, warm, and dry now? You back in the house? If you don't know, Sam was on Twitter already tonight, jumping in the river in celebration of the win.
In celebration, yes. And I will gladly do it again. They scored 37. Which, you know what's funny about this? Well, first off, I tweeted last week. There was a really just like random college football aggregation account that does score predictions. I think they predicted the game like 37-14 in favor of the Hokies. And what's funny is I don't even specifically recall quoting that tweet, but I did saying, if Tech scores 37 plus and wins, I'll shotgun a beer and jump in the river. I live on the Nansman River here between Suffolk and Norfolk, for anyone's interested. And John Love hit that field goal into the wind and hit 37-17, which was the exact score that I picked on the Monarchist, our good friends,
which is great.
Old Dominion, the Monarchist.
You nailed that one.
Some garbage time points in there, but nailed that. And so today was the first good weather day. Got home from work, cracked open a cold one, and took a dip in the river. It was actually surprisingly warm and refreshing.
It was brown water-ish from the video.
It is, but well, we're in, like on the salty side of brackish here.
Yeah.
And
it's been rough lately, right?
Yeah, I mean the storms have been ridiculous here. So it's been pretty rough water, but promise is a promise. And
people were calling for it too. I mean, there was a couple tweets like saying, "Hey Sam, when are you going to jump in the river?" You said it on Twitter, and you're like, "Oh,
I'm sorry, there's a tropical depression off the coast."
We didn't want this to turn into an FSU situation, as Hokie Joe said.
Was never an opportunity for that to happen. I told Hokies football, let's run it back.
Let's run it back, dude. All right, why don't you give us a cheers and do a little bit more celebrating?
Yeah, my cheers is to the Norfolk curse being lifted. The demons have been exorcised. And no, this is not like The Exorcist. We will not have part 2 and part 3. And I think there's a part 4. We're not have a remake. Nope, this is it. That is my cheers. And I'm also going to say that might be the last time Tech ever plays in Norfolk. I'm going to
hope so. Cheers. Unless they build the Commander Stadium down there and it becomes a NFL stadium, that's the next time I want to play in Norfolk.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
I think there was plans for that many years ago that never went through. But let's get to news and notes, man. Let's fire into this depth chart and injury update, because there was some stuff this week. For one thing, Caleb Woodson started at will last game. And so Kelly has been, obviously he was nicked up over spring. He was nicked up a little bit in fall camp, and turned out he needed to be supplanted here. And that was with Keller starting the first game. We had Kelly starting the second game, and now we got Woodson. So this is the third different starter at the will position, but might be the best person to step into that position yet this year.
I think so too. He has a very not to this level of efficiency as a player or effectiveness, but he has a very Cody Grimm style of play. Like, he's not an oversized linebacker, but he's also not a pure DB. Like, he plays that classic whip position. I know Virginia Tech doesn't have that now, but he's that type of player.
I agree.
And I think that's what they see in him. And I think they're saying, hey, I don't care how big this guy is. He gets out there and he makes tackles. And compared to most of the other linebackers, he's been in the right place at the right time more often than not so far this year. So I think they keep rolling with him. Another guy we'll probably talk about is Caleb Spencer, the transfer from Miami, who I thought has gotten more and more snaps and has played pretty darn well.
Yeah, he has. And I wasn't ready for that Cody Grimm comp, but it's a good one. It really is
style. No, I also think another player would be like Kaishan Jarrett, who is definitely more of a safety, but when Kaishan would come up to the line of scrimmage when Tech used to just stack the box like crazy.
I see that one too, yeah.
A kind of very
physical
honey
players,
badger physicality,
maybe a slightly undersized for the position, slightly. But I like Woodson's game, and I'm excited about him potentially starting going forward. Lawson was in the blue non-contact jersey at practice today. Jennings was a full go, though. Yes. Ollie Jennings, he had been listed as questionable by Pry a couple days ago, but he practiced. Chaplin practiced today. So our worst fears are not realized. It looks like he's going to be a go for this upcoming game, barring any pre-workout, pre-game warm-up injuries again, which is what he had against ODU and had to leave the game after just a couple snaps. Johnny Garrett stepped in, and I thought he did a pretty nice job stepping up in that spot. Do you agree with that?
I thought he did a great job. And, as far as Chaplin, I don't know like the specifics of what happened pregame in terms of, injury wise, but I think that was a good move keeping him out. I saw him run back where we were sitting. We had a good view of Tech going in and out of the locker room, and he was just walking fine, going in and out of the halftime locker room. I don't know. That's a game that you were probably never ever going to throw the ball a lot, and Old Dominion doesn't have much of a pass rush, so I don't think there's really a point in risking your left tackle's health in that matchup.
When you're about to play Rutgers in Miami.
Yeah, I think that's the smart move. And same with Ollie Jennings. Like Tech was never going to be throwing the ball in that second half a bunch. If he's a little nicked up, if it's soft tissue, you definitely don't want him out there. If it's an ankle, you just want to get it wrapped up and put on ice. Like there's matchup wise for that Old Dominion game, there was no reason for those guys to be back out there. Honestly, I think if Tech is up by a little bit more there to start the third quarter, like I don't know how much Student plays in that second half. He played very well and he had 2 rushing touchdowns in the second half, but it's just kind of one of those games.
Speaking of Tootin, he was in a blue non-contact jersey. They've been joking on TSL, put him in bubble wrap, and I would agree with that. We need him as close to 100% as possible. He doesn't need to practice. He is just that good. So the rounding out the blue non-contact guys would be Gosnell. And so he's been in that for weeks and continues to play pretty well regardless. So
he got crushed.
There
were some big hits in that game from Old Dominion, and Gosnell got crushed in one of those plays. So probably just shaking off the cobwebs day. I mean, there's wide receivers probably not going to take a lot of contact in practice anyways at this point. So, yeah.
And then Bob Schick is listed as an or with right guard Laith Ganem. And it seemed like Bob was getting some first team reps today in practice. And so maybe we'll see him start against Rutgers. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. Some people were kind of saying maybe it's the experience, and maybe when you're going up against a team like Rutgers with a big line, you would rather have Bob in there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they end up with. I do think you're going to see them, like, because no one stands out in a couple of these positions, they might be at a point where, hey, if I feel like the guy's getting tired, I might just rather have fresh legs in there. Like, I don't know if there's one player who has really put themselves above the rest. So at this point, you're like, hey, I just want fresh bodies out there. You don't usually rotate offensive line like that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Tech rotate offensive line this season a bit more than other teams do.
Yeah, and we'll see, because the first game we really didn't do too much rotating at all. And we've seen just a bit more, and we were up in the last game, which allowed other guys to get in there. But whoever you're rolling out, they need to start playing just a little bit better each week. And we'll talk about that when we get to the full ODU recap in a second. CFB Monday was back. Robert joined me 8 p.m. on Monday. I thought he was great. Rob is really good. You can throw just about anything at him with all of college football, and he'll have a take, he'll have a thought. And we did our VT Corner segment. We did our playoff predictions. He had UNLV as the G5 representative, which was a little bit different from what me and you have with Boise State. He also had Oklahoma in there in his playoff predictions, which we're going to find out real soon whether that's viable or not, right? Because they play Tennessee this weekend. Pick'em leaders. The leader is Pikes Peak Hokie. He or she is 20-10 right now. That's really good through the first 3 weeks. I had a 4-6 week, so I dropped back a little bit. How you doing?
I was horrific betting last week. Horrific. Everything went wrong. 3 different games that I bet. The team I bet on, their starting quarterback got injured in the first half.
Ooh, that is rough.
Yeah.
And one of those was South Carolina, right?
One of those South Carolina, who also had 2 pick sixes pulled back.
Taken off the board, yep.
And then Wisconsin should have hit over 16.5 points, but the backup quarterback missed an open guy in the end zone, and then they missed the field goal. It was just a mess of a day. But we keep moving.
Yes, we will be back again this weekend, and we're going to make some picks at the end of the show. How was the Aslan event on Friday night? You went to the game, but the night before, you were at the Aslan location in Virginia
Yeah.
Beach. Got to see some of our listeners and friends. How was it?
Yeah, it's a great spot. It's about like a couple blocks off of the main ocean front there in Virginia Beach. So if you're going to the Shack or Chicks or something like that, it's a great place to start because you can either, it's a really quick drive or you can probably just walk over if you wanted to. Awesome spot. Shout out to Dalton, who is the property manager there, class of 2016, very open arms, welcoming us there. It's a great spot. They have good music, good food, tons of space, awesome big TV out front. So if you're in the Virginia Beach area and need a place to hang out, Aslan, because they got great beer as well. Really good stuff.
I was going to say, what was the best beer you had? Was it an IPA? Was it an Oktoberfest? Was it a kind of a stout? I know they make good stouts at Aslan.
They do. I had a Hefeweizen to start. That was, I let me pull up the name of it as we're talking, but really good. Had a cool, like, kind of like a Bananas Foster aftertaste to it, which you can sometimes get with Hefeweizens.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I really, really liked it. But Aslan is always like, I think we've talked about this before, though. They're usually solid across the board, and they put out a lot of different beers. Like their tap menu at their tap rooms or breweries, whichever one you go to, is pretty extensive.
It's packed, yeah, for sure. And while you're pulling that up, I wanted to let you guys know, make sure you are liking the video and subscribing. Not so much a letting you know as a request, because we need your likes, we need your subscribes on the Sons of Saturday channel. We are almost to 3,000 subscribers. I think we're about 90 away. So that's going to be pretty cool. Hopefully we'll hit that later this month or in October.
The no backsies.
No backsies. Okay.
No backsies from Aslan Brewing. I gave it a 3.75. It's a 3.69 on the app. So it's pretty decently high beer for one of the lower alcohol levels.
Let's get into the game recap. The broadcast for this game, which you mercifully did not have to see, was awful. And I don't know if you got to see any of, like, did you watch it after the fact or anything?
I tried to rewatch the game and I gave up.
Oh, it was probably the worst broadcast. Billy and Pat already went into this, so I'm not gonna really pile on, but like, my God, ESPN Plus, get it together. That was a high school level broadcast, and that's probably doing a disservice to some of the high school broadcasts out there. We quickly got up 14-0 on two great drives. Jalen Lane was making plays all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was back to our typical first half screw ups. Gave up 10 points in the second quarter. It was 14-10 at the half. Once again, we came out in the second half, and we're our second half Hokies. Like, we should just put that on a jersey or something, because that's what we are. Offense got going, some bulldozing runs by Kyron and Tootin. And in the fourth quarter, you already mentioned it, Tootin had 2 touchdowns. We even got the backups in the game, which happens rarely. I mean, I know it happened a handful of times last year, but this year we haven't really gotten a chance to do that yet. 37-17 was the margin. We covered the spread, right, Sam? Like, I haven't done that yet this year. So that was nice. But as always, let's do voicemails to give you a bigger picture of how people were feeling during the game.
I just want to be happy. How do we look like world beaters for 2 drives and then just absolutely piss down our legs? I just want to be happy for once in my life.
Pete, I've been calm all day. I've had 10 beers. My whole family's over here. I'm in the spare room, and I'm freaking pissed. It's 14-10. We just punted again. Drones doesn't know who he's throwing to. We're going backwards. We are going to screw this up and be another laughingstock of college football.
I have come to the conclusion that the Virginia Tech Hokies have been hit with some kind of tidewater voodoo shit or something like that.
This is absolutely ridiculous. We come out like a ball of fire, and then we try to change everything up.
After today, we got to get rid of... Hold on one second. Hold on. I'll be back in 1 second. Give me a second. We are trash.
Every time we come marching down there, I don't know what's floating in them waters or something, but shit goes down, and not in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, bad. Very, very, very bad.
Our defense looks like they've never stepped on a football field before. We're letting a subpar team hang around.
And I've already prayed to the Lord, and I've got all the crosses hanging up in my house right now, is that we need to turn some shit around in the second half and erase this voodoo because I'm tired of it.
If we don't fix what we have going on right now, we won't have a winning record at the end of the year.
And then we seem to turn it on again in the second half.
It's great to see the Hokies finally dominate a game. Triple digits in rushing yards, triple digits in receiving yards, 5 sacks by the defense. What a great game.
That hope train is also the hype train, and I'm on it right now, baby.
How about that APR, guys? Let's not talk anything about the offensive line. How about APR, man? High motor guy. Just doesn't quit. Love his fucking game.
Next up is Rutgers. Certainly hope they can continue this momentum, as that's going to be a tough matchup. Looking forward to it.
Just getting blazed up out here on the kids' swing set, enjoying a Hokie victory.
We got some angry ODU fans, but you know what? They hate us because they ain't us.
It's on to my 12th beer. See you later. Love you, bud. Bye.
Great group of calls this week. So many funny ones. And you could really hear people were pissed in the first half. And I was texting with the chat that we're all in, Sam, and people who weren't watching the game, like, look, we're checking the score and been like, you guys are kind of freaking out over nothing. But everyone who was watching that game in the first half was freaking out a little bit. Because when it got to 14-10 on that kind of weird play where no one touched him, people were upset. And then you had the complete opposite. I love Kevin from Orlando, I believe. He calls in every week, and like it was all doom and gloom. And then Kevin's like, "What a great game!" Because like, he waited till the end to call. Coach Holmes had some great observations throughout, but even in the first half, he said, "You know, if we continue to play like this, we're not going to go 500 this year." And I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think it was 2 plays. Like there were 2 plays in this game that went against Tech. And one of them was a clear miscommunication from the linebacker core where you had 2 guys filling the same. I believe you had 2 guys like slanting to hit the A gap. That didn't make any sense at all. And then on another play, you have, your defensive end crashes a little too hard, and then Kelly Lawson misses the tackle, and Bryce Duke has no one there because you're playing press coverage on the outside, and your safeties are up. And so there's no one left there if your guy misses the tackle. Outside of those 2 plays, Tech was 100% utterly dominant.
Yes.
On defense.
And
so
that became clear at the end. That became clear at the end. But you have to admit, those 2 plays and the missed field goal were all grouped. And the decision not to go for it. What was it?
It was Tech went touchdown.
Yeah.
Old Dominion punted in between those. And then Tech had 8-play drive for 40 yards. Went forward on 4th and 4, which I think was the right call considering the wind was
what it was.
Whirling at that point. And you're like, look, we've moved the ball all day. Foot on throat, like, let's keep going. It was a good go for it call. I actually think Tech had a good play call in that scenario, like one-on-one slant to your best guy. Like, I don't hate that. ODU just did kind of what they ended up doing all night and blitzing the middle linebacker time and time again. And Drones just had to get the ball out a step too soon and kind of overthrew / missed the slant. But life goes on, right? Like, you take that chance because ODU went negative yardage after that play.
Yeah. But my point was that like
it's like
we kind of grouped all the bad in one spot, and it felt a little catastrophic to the listeners. But then you did have like the high on the swings. He called back. We haven't heard from him yet this year, but that was a victory where you go down to Norfolk, you get the win. It deserves a blaze up on the kids swing set. And I wanted to say the Tidewater voodoo shit like cracked me up. And then my buddy Brian called in a couple different times. And I love the one where he's like, he's talking and he's like, we got to fire. Someone like clearly walks in the room. He's like, hold on a second. We are trash. It was just like, I was dying through so many of those calls, but thank you for calling. If you want to get in on the reaction line this week against Rutgers, it's 540-251-2169. Sam, we're going to get to the story of the game right after I take this break. So think of your story of the game. 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence is brought to you by Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. The #1 cocktail in the world is available in a can. It's true. Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey and Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola Zero is available in your local grocery and convenience stores in a can. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke, ready to drink. RTD, you can find them. I was just in my store. They had tons of Jack and Coke ready to go. There's actually a Jack and Ginger as well. I don't know if people are aware of that.
Ooh.
And as always, if you're enjoying one of those delicious beverages, please drink responsibly. Sam, what was your story of the game if you had to sum it up in a sentence?
It's got to be just lifting the curse of that place. And I think it was the first time Tech has played a game down there. And honestly, one of the first times for under Brent Pry that it looked like the ball just bounced the Hokies' way a few times. I mean, you had the snap to Drones when he wasn't ready that he's able to pick up and hit Jalen Lane for a big gain. You had, I mean, the block kick is a bit unfortunate, but you won the turnover battle, recovered a fumble or two. I just feel like Tech had the ball bounce their way a few times. Like there was a few tipped balls that very easily could have been intercepted from Kyron Drones that fell to the ground. That could have been huge momentum swings. That didn't happen. So feels like that was the first time not everything went totally against Virginia Tech.
Just a couple things, like the missed field goal, you weren't expecting that from John Love. Like he's been money. So like that was, it was tipped, right?
It was blocked. And so Old Dominion was basically had 2 guys jumping over the line every single kick. Now you can, if you clear everybody, totally clear them, you can jump over the line. You can't come into contact with anybody else when you're making that leap. They were pretty clearly coming into contact with other players on those leaps, and they just weren't getting called for launching. Brent Pry, after one of the Love made field goals in the second half, like lit into the ref saying, dude, you got to call that. They're doing it every single time. And they just never called it. So credit to them. They needed to be aggressive though. And they did. Old Dominion did a lot of things defensively and on special teams throughout the game to be uber aggressive. And that was one of them.
Which we knew they were going to do. Whenever I see someone jump over the line on a block kick, it reminds me of Cam Chancellor. Because I felt like after Cam successfully did that once or twice in big spots, like that's when the NFL started cracking down on it.
Yeah, I mean, to a bit of a homer, but the only guy I've seen successfully do it in an NFL game since then is Myles Garrett against the Colts last year.
Okay.
But it's usually called, and it is. Yeah, because it's usually almost impossible to jump over a 300-pound lineman.
So your story was related to the curse. I would say my story was a little bit more direct in that it was Kyron getting back to the old him and the defense shutting them down. Like it's obviously a 2-part story there, but we had seen the run game have positive impact in the second half against Marshall, but we didn't see it quite like this with our quarterback leading the charge. It was very similar to Tulane. And I think I said that when I was on with Rob. And if we want to go to the offense in general, once again, we have this tale of 2 halves. I know this time we scored 14 points, which gave us more of a cushion because in the previous 2 contests, we only scored 3 in each one in the first half on offense. We got 14 this time, and it allowed us to take those 10 points and still have a lead at the half. But I'm getting a little tired of these first half lulls, these slow starts, however you want to quantify it. This can't happen against power teams. Like we won't be able to pull it off against power teams.
Yeah, and I think it's not as much that the offense wasn't able to move the ball in the first half. They definitely were. I mean, 2 of their drives that didn't end in points was a 40-yard drive and a 58-yard drive. So it's not like they weren't moving the ball. It's just the red zone offense has to be a little bit better. I think the play calling needs to be a bit more consistent. I thought it was a lot better against Old Dominion.
Consistency is something that Coach Holmes has mentioned. He mentioned it on his call. One of his calls was like the quality was too bad, but he was talking about consistency.
Yeah, I mean, you can't phone in a drive. And I feel like against Vanderbilt in the first half and against Marshall a couple times in the first half, they kind of just phoned in the drive. Like they were like, you know what, we'll hand the ball to Tootin a couple times. We'll try a quick swing, screen pass. If we don't get going, that's fine. And you can't really play with that attitude going into this weekend. Every single drive has to be treated like we need to score. Or we need to win the field position battle. If Tech goes 3 and out a couple times in this game in the first half against Rutgers, I don't want to get to the preview too quick, but that's going to be bad.
Yeah.
You can't put that much pressure on this defense against Kyle Monarchs.
So 23 points in the second half. We're now at 68 in second halves compared to 20 points on offense in the first halves. We need to play a complete game on offense. When we play Rutgers and we play Miami, two of the better teams that we're going to play are in the next 2 weeks. You need to string together more than 3/4 of just high quality play. And I know you're going to have duds. You're going to have a 3 and out here and there, but you just can't go silent for the long periods of times that we've gone silent when it seems like we're avoiding the thing that would get us yards. And that is the run game. And we have been over this, Sam. We're not exactly sure why they're a little hesitant to go to the run. A new theory that has come to me, because maybe it's something that Chris Coleman said and something that I was just thinking about, are we playing possum on purpose? I don't believe this to be the case. It's a theory that Tootin can only handle so many carries.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use up all those carries, and this is where I'm getting from CC, then he will be spent by the second half. However, we have other running backs on the team, and you can't take that chance that it doesn't work in the second half. So that theory, I'm putting it out there, but I think it's bogus. They need to just turn to the run game more in general.
I mean, Tech would be far from the first team to have a stud running back and give them more carries in the second half than the first half. That's pretty common football. But I agree that there needs to be a level of aggression earlier in games. I thought we saw that against ODU. I really do. I think they took some shots early. They ran the nice, they call them deceptives, not trick plays. I don't know if you heard Tyler Bowen today, where they kind of fake a screen and Lane just streaked down the field wide open.
The jumping jacks from
Clements. Yeah, loved that play. I thought they were fine play calling wise in the first half. I think they just missed some execution there a little bit. And
that's been part of it. There has been execution errors, but I felt like the first 2 drives were great and they were probably scripted out, right? And then after the script was over, what did we do?
I think it took us a little bit. I think it's twofold. Old Dominion definitely made some defensive changes after those first 2 drives, because after that they blitzed the middle linebacker, Koa. I'm going to butcher his last name. He played with his hair on fire.
Yeah, no, he was replacing Jason Henderson the last few weeks, and he's good.
He's a good player. They blitz him pretty much every play. He just at the snap, he chooses one side of the center and he goes. And they started to do that third drive that Virginia Tech had, and it caused them to have to get to that 4th and 4, because I believe they ran the ball on that 3rd down and got stuffed. I think it took them a little bit to, okay, how do we continue to run the ball while accounting for them just kind of run blitzing every play? Because I don't think they wanted Kyron to throw the ball 40 times in that game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this twofold of ODU made a good defensive adjustment, a very aggressive defensive adjustment, but at the same time, it can't take you a quarter to figure out how to adjust to that.
Not against ODU.
It has to take you a drive. And this game against Rutgers, Greg Schiano is a defensive guy. They have had a bye week before this game. They are going to schematically challenge this Virginia Tech offense. Tech is going to have to adjust quickly in this game. And that's something that this coaching staff has not shown an ability to do.
Right. They do great at the half. It seems that when they have a little bit of time to sit, even though half times aren't super long, but they have done great at the half in all 3 games. It needs to happen quicker. When we have these bouts of adversity, these spurts where we just can't do anything, we need to get out of them more quickly. And let's go to the good, because it was our quarterback. And when he is playing confidently and being patient and picking his spots, he's amazing. This is what we saw at the end of the year last year. And I was so happy to see it come back. 117 yards rushing for Kyron, 2 total TDs. That physical run, it reminded me of the Gerard Evans run against TCU. Just
Yeah,
going down the field, juking,
it was pretty
plowing.
sick.
Oh, yeah, dude, it was
It was
fantastic.
one of the most cathartic plays I've ever watched live because it felt like that was the moment that the curse was lifted in my eyes.
Mhm.
Like it was, Kyron's like, I've had enough of this. I'm just going to run over 3 different players. in
It
this
changed the
play. Like,
game. I felt like
oh, it
that
did. The game was
play
over after that run.
changed the
In my
game,
mind,
for
over.
sure. And Tootin added 115 yards and 2 touchdowns of his own, and that's with the offensive line still struggling mightily. Like Tootin is so good
Yeah.
at breaking tackles. Like he breaks so many tackles. And I'm not like trying to trash the O-line because they are a better run blocking O-line. We have been over this. People think, oh, our O-line stinks. We can't run the ball. That's wrong. We are more effective when we can use Tootin and drones, play them off of each other, do our little smoke and mirrors BS. And the O-line, when forced to be physical, they are better. When they have to step back and pass pro, I feel like that's when we have problems.
They're significantly better forward moving offensive line than they are pass blocking or
Yes.
spreads. Like when they are on the front foot as an offensive line, they get the job done and they get it done against pretty much competition at every other level. Like even Florida State last year. Tech started
Right. We
horribly
called
in
too
that
many
game.
passes in that beginning of that game. We called like 6 of 7 passes in the beginning of that game. And it pissed me off then. And it pissed me off every time this year because we are a running team. We ran for 289 yards as a team in this game, 5.7 yards per carry. And I will say, ODU, they have their issues. A lot of their issues are on offense. Their defense is not a terrible unit. And to run
it's
for
good.
almost 6 yards a carry, it was fantastic. And I loved every minute of it. We do need to mention Jalen Lane, make sure he gets his flowers because 7 for 106 and a touchdown was glorious. Now, I think all of that came very early in the game. I think he basically didn't get much action the rest of the game, but that's okay. We went to our strength.
We'll take that.
And we continued to score points. And in the game overall, 465 yards of offense. It was the 4th most yards of offense we've had in Drones' 14 starts. So definitely a good total, 6 yards per play. I think if you're looking at just to put the last negative before we get to defense, it's if the O-line can just clean up the tackles for loss, because we are allowing so many tackles for loss. It's 5th most in the Power 5 on a per game basis. If we can clean that up and continue to focus on the run and Kyron and Tootin can stay healthy, it could be such a beautiful thing on offense.
I agree with you. And a quick point on Jalen Lane. In the second quarter, there was a play where he broke free on like a post route in the middle of a cover 2. Drones didn't see him because he had to get flushed out of the pocket right. I think he was actually about to throw, had to get flushed out of the pocket, ended up throwing it out of bounds, I think. If he gets a split second longer, that ball, that's like a 70-yard touchdown to Jalen Lane in the second quarter. And it was, you saw Kyron about to load up there, and then he had to flush out of the pocket. So there was like, it could have been a really big day for Jalen Lane.
This is what we're talking about with, us being so close.
It really is this close on a lot of plays.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And it's like one of those plays where Kyron probably couldn't have gotten off the pass needed to complete in that situation. Like he had to tuck it and run, but you're like, gosh, like wide receiver gets open, you call a good play, quarterback sees it, and you're just like a step away. But good news, they've gotten better every week. And that is clear. They have gotten better every single week.
Last piece of the puzzle is the O-line and red zone touchdowns. If you can get me a few more red zone touchdowns, play a little bit better, a few less tackles for loss, this offense could come together, and it could come together quick. Let's move to defense. And aside from the 2 big plays that you highlighted earlier, they were dominant. 6 sacks in this one. They actually added that 6 sack. That's not so easy to say, to the box score. A couple days later, Panay got the 6 sack. So JC Price's graphic was correct. We did have 6 sacks.
Willed it into existence.
Yeah, right. They're like, let's just give Panay one of them. But 4 for APR. What a monster. Only 50 yards passing in the game for ODU. Their fewest yards passing in the history of their program, from what I understand.
Well, this was ODU used to be like an air raid team before Ricky Ronnie.
Heineke, right?
Yeah, Taylor Heineke was a monster.
Not to be confused with Heinekel or whatever this kid's name
Yeah,
is.
I mean, this was just. I don't think the outcome of the game would have been different if, was it Grant Wilson, excuse me, if he would have been in the game. But you would have seen a little bit more balance from ODU. I mean, they could not throw the ball. And what they were doing is they were running those wide stack splits. It's a very unique offense that they run. And they basically have two wide receivers on about 5 yards from each sidelines, and they're stacked one behind the other. And the object is just to spread your defense out as wide as they can. And then they try to run off tackle, read option. That was their only play. And Tech only really messed that up twice. I give them a lot of credit because that's a really weird offense. Like, you will not see an offense do that again. Maybe in college football this year.
Yeah, and it was desperation.
Watching. Yes.
That's the only reason they're doing that shit. And we've got to shout out Bryce Duke because we saw in that game why we recruited him. Like, he can play. He can play football, and he's got some skills.
He's
and I'm happy
for
him that he's playing. Yeah.
He's going to do good. Like, they're not going to be that bad on offense for the rest of the year. They're going to win some football games. They're too well coached and they're too aggressive on defense to get blown out in games. There
was a point in the third quarter where we sacked ODU on 4 straight dropbacks.
That's pretty awesome.
There were 20 dropbacks in the game. We had 6 sacks. So if you do that math, Sam, that's over 25% of the time we sacked them every time. And 4 of those came in a row. Like, absolutely crazy. APR was a menace. 2 forced fumbles on top of his sacks, 7 total tackles. He won the Walter Camp National Player of the Week along with Alan Bowman. So that's pretty cool. Got an interception for Mansour. Caleb Woodson, we mentioned him. He had 7 tackles with the start. And then Gilliam, he got on the board with a sack. And six tackles for him too. If you're putting up 6 tackles from the defensive line, like, that's a nice day.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought our defensive tackles ate all game. They were really good. They were the difference when, after those 2 big runs, the defensive tackles started getting in the backfield almost immediately. And I think that was the difference because it really just speeds up the decision-making of the quarterback on that read option. That's going to be really big this week against Rutgers.
On the last drive of the game for ODU, they had 75 yards and they scored that garbage time touchdown. But if you were to remove that garbage time drive, we essentially gave up 0 yards in the second half. Go through the drive chart, add up the yardage. It's about 0. It was so impressive what we were able to do to them in the second half. So shout out to the defense. They were awesome. A lot of contributors to that cause. Yeah, we gave up some rushing yards, but again, I think over 25% might have come on 2 plays. I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was a lot
pretty much. I wouldn't be surprised if it's bigger than that. And another
if
thing,
you took out the last drive, especially, it would have been a huge percentage.
Yeah. If you look at available yards, so like if you start your drive on the 50, you can only get 50 yards, right? Virginia Tech acquired 76% of available yards in this game. ODU only 28%.
Oof, that's
so
really
you're
bad.
dominating field position, but also Tech couldn't have done that much better on offense. Like, they could have scored some touchdowns a little bit better, but in terms of drives, Tech was very, very good offensively, and ODU didn't even get a third of their available yards. Like, that's a pretty dominant defensive performance.
Over half of their drives for ODU, 8 of 14, went for 3 plays or less that we stopped them. The score was on 1 play, but outside of the 3 scoring plays, like, none of their drives went for more than 6 plays. Like, we were just dominating them. So takeaways, I say overall, it wasn't a pretty game. I never expected it to be a pretty game. And we lacked the consistency on offense, whether it's scheme, whether it's blocking, play calling. Like, there is a lack of consistency, but was a good, when it was all said and done, I was very pleased with the win to go down there and beat them in a place that's given us so much trouble. This was important mentally. That's really what I'm taking away from it.
I mean, this was as needed of a result as you could pretty much have in a non-conference scenario. Like this was, to my mind, this was a more of a must-win than the Vanderbilt game or the Marshall game. Like we were talking about it pregame. Like if they lose this game, there are some changes coming. Like
it was a must-win.
It was an absolute must win, and they did it. And they did it in relatively dominant fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So credit to them. They really, I think, played hard. They played with a lot of energy in a game where I think the fans started to go, as we heard in our voicemails, oh no, woe is me, head in hands.
Everyone went into that game already scared.
Players didn't do that. Players weren't scared in the game. Players didn't hang their head. They made the adjustments. Big credit to them.
Definitely. All right. We're going to take our beer break right after I tell you that the Too Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Rhoback. You know Rhoback, the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. They have the new drop, which we talked about, the lane. The new TV logo polo is out. That's brand new, fresh, just came out a couple days ago. And they also have the game day polo, which has the helmet and the VT with the fingers. But Sam, the Commonwealth is back in stock, both in the maroon with the orange Virginias and the white with the maroon Virginias. I think I got that right. They're awesome. I love the original Commonwealth in addition to the new drop. So if you need to grab those, use code 2DEEPVT and get 20% off your order. Tell your wife to order it this time. Ask a cousin, your mom, someone else with another email. You have a work email. Get in there. Get your 20%. Add a quarter zip.
100 days till Christmas.
Don't do the Christmas creep on me, but okay, fine. If you're going to buy some Rhoback, get it for Christmas. Do it now.
100 days till Christmas.
Oh my God, that's so scary. That is so freaking
even less if you celebrate Hanukkah.
Oh my God. Yep. Tees, quarter zips, shorts, joggers, women's dresses, and of course the polos. 2DEEPVT for 20% off your order. Rhoback, crave activity. Sam, right now I need to know what you're drinking.
Well, this is my second beer of the night. And but I've stuck with the same one for both of them. This is the Bavarian Prince Oktoberfest from New Realm here in Virginia Beach. It is their limited release for Oktoberfest. Pretty cool can. If you're not watching on YouTube, it's got a very like Monty Python medieval look with the horses and the light blue sky and the clouds. Pretty cool can. And then the beer itself is the beautiful amber color that you want from an Oktoberfest. Pretty clear. It's crisp. It's malty, caramelly. It's just a really solid Oktoberfest. I give it a 3.75. It does its job. Wasn't that bad to shotgun, surprisingly.
That's the one that you shotgunned?
Well, you see, Pete, I'll tell you what, I don't know what America has come to when somebody can't get home from work and buy a single 8-ounce PBR.
That's what you were trying to grab one at 7-Eleven or something?
Yeah, and they just only have like 16 ounces. I'm like, chill. My day hasn't been that bad. But
have you ever seen the black PBR? It's like a black can.
Do you have to go into like a special room in the 7-Eleven to get one?
I've seen it in my New Jersey beer store. They've got the black cans of PBR, and it's like the strong PBR. It's probably like 7% PBR.
Like PBR Ice or something?
Yeah, it's basically PBR Ice. I forget what they actually call it. I think it might be called Extra, PBR Extra. But anyway, I like that. New Realm is a good place. I've been there. If you go to my profile on Sons of Saturday, which you're not going to be able to see with my light on, my picture is taken at New Realm. I've got my Too Deep koozie, and I'm enjoying myself at New Realm. It's a great layout they have down there in Virginia Beach.
It is, and they do a really solid job. Almost every bar, brewer, like tap room here has a good selection of different New Realms. So they do a good job marketing their beers as well.
I am drinking the Oktoberfest from Great Lakes. This is something you should be familiar with, Sam. This is a Cleveland brewery, and
one of the best.
They do a great job with their beers. It's rare when I don't like what they have. And every year, whether it's their Christmas, which is their big release, or their Oktoberfest, there's always some slight differences, some slight nuances. So even though I've had the Great Lakes Oktoberfest in the past, I wanted to try it again. And this is one of my favorites. Like this has been, I've probably had 6 or 7 different Oktoberfests already, multiple on the podcast. This is probably the best I've had on the podcast. It is glorious. The color is a deep, deep amber, almost like a brown ale. And the flavor, it's a perfect balance of that caramel and that malt that you're talking about. I love it. And it also feels like I could drink a bunch of them. I don't know how much alcohol is in it. I don't know. Oh, 6.5. So not too much, but not too little.
Yeah, this is 6.3. And then again, my Cleveland is showing, but Great Lakes Brewing is one of the best breweries, I think, in America. They have a ton of award-winning beers. So if you ever see a Great Lakes, their Christmas ale, again, Christmas coming up, their Christmas ale is phenomenal. So
they do a big
Great
thing
Lakes
for
get
that
it.
too, right? Like they have like this big release party. I remember
yeah.
Robbie's wife is from Ohio, and he would talk about it in the pod because she's told him about it. Let's get to Rutgers, man. 9:21, 3:30 p.m. Great start time on ACC Network. This is the White Effect game, Sam. So we
White, whoa, White to a Virginia Tech game.
We tried White once this year. didn't work out so well down in Norfolk. Wasn't an official White Effect. This one is, and we played this team last year. People remember. I remember because me and Billy and Pat, we were all in the same stadium in Piscataway, watching us lose 35-16. This was Kyron Drones' first start, and Rutgers ran for 256 yards and 4 touchdowns. Monarchs, the running back, who we'll talk about shortly, had 3 of those touchdowns and 8.9 yards per carry. It was a disaster of a game. It was not pretty. We fumbled right off the bat. But even in Kyron's first start, and this is where I'm going to get to a glimmer of hope before we get to the full game preview, 274 total yards for Mr. Drones, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and the fumble. If he were to have cleaned up those turnovers, and keep in mind, it was his first start as a collegiate athlete, it could have been a game. Yeah. And they were a very decent team last year. They finished with the same record we did, and it got started on the wrong foot. But I'm excited to have a little rematch with this team.
I am too. And I think this is one where the weakness of Virginia Tech since Brent Price took over, not totally Brent Price's fault, but it's been the rush defense and the allowing big plays. And then this is the team that has the stud running back. The difference is they don't have a running quarterback. KAC Manis, he transferred from Minnesota, is a statue back there.
Did you have a seizure there real quick? Well, how did you say that name?
Athan? It's KAC Manis.
Sounds like you sneezed or something.
It does. But it's Athan, not Nathan. Athan just starts with an A.
I'm making fun of the name, not you. He comes over from Minnesota.
I've practiced that. KAC Manis.
And isn't his brother on the team too?
Yeah, they basically like wooed him to Rutgers by recruiting his little brother as well. But anyway, what gives Virginia Tech trouble in the rushing game has been not just a good running back. They've played good running backs and done well against them. It's been that running back quarterback combo, and specifically a quarterback who can throw off of that RPO as well, not just the read option. Basically, if there is a third option, Virginia Tech does not know how to scheme defensively for it. Vanderbilt hurt them a lot with it. Florida State, with a very athletic, mobile Jordan Travis, hurt them a lot with it. The only team that's really ran on them without that option is Louisville. And that was an offensive line game for Louisville. There wasn't, you and I could have ran for 100 yards in that game. I think a good proxy for this game, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but I think of like the Syracuse game from last year. And I'm blanking on their running back's name. LeQuint
Allen, yeah.
LeQuint Allen. Not as good as Kyle Monangai, but similar style player. And you could see from that game where Tech was like, oh, that's the guy you want to get the ball to? Okay, done. You're not going to do anything. This to me is a similar game schematically in terms of Rutgers offense versus Virginia Tech's defense.
It was one of those games from last year that you wish we had gotten it after we had made our turn, right?
Right. And that's another one of my points. Like Tech plays this game in November. Tech probably is closer to this game. You know, it's not a 19-point game.
It's a big game. Like if you look at where it is in the season, and we got Miami coming up and then the rest of the ACC slate, the difference between 2-2 and 3-1, it's massive, especially with Miami just like 6 days later. So it's a big spot. We haven't beaten the out of conference power team since 2017. That's been talked about a lot. It was West Virginia, the first game of 2017. We're 0-11 out of conference against power teams. We haven't won 3 games in a row since 2019. There is a lot. There's a lot on the line here, Sam. And let me give you the lay of the land with Rutgers before we kind of get into their players. In FPI, they're 47th. That's essentially where they were preseason because they've only played 2 games and they were against bad teams. VT is 39th. We're favored to win by the FPI. SP plus 41 for Rutgers, 35 for Virginia Tech. We are favored to win by that metric. Sagarin, 49th. VT is 38th. We are favored to win by that metric as well. In Athlon preseason, Rutgers was 41. That was behind us. Lindy's 46. That was behind us. And in Steele, they were 41 in his power poll, where we were in the top 20 at number 17, 16, something like that.
For what it's worth, I have Tech at 30 and Rutgers at 32.
Yeah, so you've got us winning too.
There you go.
Because we're home. And so it's not like we're going to Piscataway this time. Even though we haven't played perfect in our to be kind in the first 3 games, the metrics still say we have a good shot to win the game. And there's reasons for that, and it's not just Rutgers. You have to forget, this is a little similar to Vandy. Like, you kind of have to forget the name on the jersey because Schiano has built them up, and since he's come back, he has improved them every year. He's just a little bit under 500 since he came back, but in his first stint, he got them over 500. I don't think people understand how bad Rutgers was before he got there many, many years ago. And he turned them into a winner, and he's starting to do it now. They have players on both sides of the ball. Their lines are both solid, which is where you need to start with this thing. The one thing that could hold them back, Sam, is they are nicked up. There are guys that are missing, and I'll let you kind of expand on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I believe they have a couple of defensive injuries that have – I mean, it's hard to even look at their games this year.
I know.
So I don't know if you mentioned it. I don't think so. They have played Howard, which is a mid to bottom tier FCS team. And they have played Akron, who is one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in Power 5 in major football. They're terrible. They're probably a middle of the road FCS team, to be honest with you. They beat up on those 2 teams at home, and then they had a bye week. Like, you cannot tell anything about Rutgers numbers from this season.
No, I copied and pasted our summer preview basically and like put it on paper because it's the same thing.
I have their like preseason numbers up. Like, that's what I'm going off of. So if you see models that are only using this year, they're going to favor Rutgers because they've blown out 2 teams. If you look at numbers that are looking towards last year as well as this year and carrying over returning production and all, those are going to favor the Hokies. So if you're looking at different models or projections or things like that, I would keep that in mind. And everyone knows that. Like, Greg Schiano knows who he played the first 2 games. Like, it's not really a secret. What is interesting about this game to me is being in Blacksburg, I think, has over the last 5 or 6 years meant less and less in the wins and losses because Tech has had a lot of home losses, especially in big spots. However, this game being in Blacksburg, I think, might make the difference. Like, I think energy-wise, it is such a big deal for this game to be at home. And it's the first big game of the season at home. It's at 3:30. I think it's going to be an awesome, awesome crowd, no matter what color t-shirt they're wearing.
I said the thing about KAC Manis kind of making fun of the name or whatever, but let's talk about him in a little bit more detail because it's going to come down to him and Monungai in this game. I know the offensive line will obviously factor into the run game, but that's what I'm talking about when I talk about Kyle Monungai. KAC Manis came in from Minnesota. He had a 55 QBR last year, 115 passer rating, 14-9 TD to INT. He's not a runner and 53% completion. You go through all those numbers, and the long and the short of it was he's not a good quarterback. He isn't. Now, people can develop. They can improve over time. He's back with his old OC. But even against Howard and Akron, he's completing 62% of his passes. 6 TD to 1 INT. Congratulations. This guy does not complete the ball at a high rate. He did run for a few yards. I think it was in the Howard game on 6 carries. Again, not Howard is not really a college football team that's on this level. I'm putting my chips in that he's not good. When he played UNC last year,
I have that
At
game
U-
highlighted right now. Yep.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
At UNC, which he's coming to Blacksburg, a much harder environment to play in. He completed 38% of his passes. This guy
Yeah.
stinks.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I mean, when they played Purdue last year when he was at Memphis, he threw 18 of 42. He somehow got 292 yards, but he was 18 of 42. Like, this is not a quarter. This is
pass attempts
for Minnesota too.
Yeah,
like he basically went to the same style of team: defense, run the ball, not great quarterback play. He is not a quarterback that I'm scared of. And I don't think Rutgers recruited him to be a quarterback that you are scared of. They recruited a guy to be a field general and not make a ton of mistakes. So far, that's what he's done. But again, he hasn't really played any competition. So it's really hard to see how he's gelled in this offense. And just as much as it is hard for us to predict, I think it's hard for the Rutgers coaching staff to know what works and what doesn't, because so far it hasn't mattered. They could basically just line up, run 32 power and score 40 some points.
Yeah. I would be so much more afraid if they still had Wimsat. And that sounds crazy because he's not good either if you look at his statistics. But like for our matchups and what happened last year, like I would be so much more terrified if they still had Wimsat. And to that point about they don't know what they have because they've played two bad teams. Yes, they're fresh. They played weak competition. They had a bye. They got to watch our tape and prepare all this BS. We played 3 games, one in an SEC stadium. I know. Just kind of saying that for the sake of saying it. But Marshall and ODU they're not the worst teams in FBS. We learned so much more about ourselves than they've learned about themselves. And that knowledge we need to put to use in this game. Like they're going to come into this game. We're going to do something and they will not have realized something about one of their linebackers because he hasn't been challenged, right? And they're going to have to adjust. And we have the advantage of seeing some stuff and already making adjustments. So I think that plays into our favor to round out the offense, because we don't need to go into what Monangai did last year. He's a tough runner. He had 1,200 yards, whatever. Their offensive line only allowed 4 TFL per game last season, 12th nationally, 11th in sacks. It's a good offensive line is what I'm trying to say. They brought back a bunch of guys. The D-line, our defensive tackles, our defensive ends are going to have to do what they did against ODU. They're going to have a fantastic game. And the linebackers, this is why I'm excited about Caleb Woodson, because I just feel like the dude is going to make tackles in this game.
Yeah, that's like silly enough. That's his job. And like he has to be in the right spot at the right time. Like there is if somebody is not there, like our safeties aren't tackling Monangai, he's gone. Like you have to make that tackle at the second level of the defense or they are going to score touchdowns on you. That is how Monangai runs. Like he is a power runner. You have to get him down within 5 or 6 yards of the line of scrimmage or he's gone. However, what I will say about this, and this is looking back to Rutgers last year, the idea that you need to stop Monangai in order to win the game is not totally true. He has had really big games that they've gotten blown out. I mean, yes, I know it was Ohio State last year, but he ran for 160 against Ohio State. They got crushed in that game. He ran for 118 against Maryland. They lost that game by 18 points. He ran for 148 against a bad Michigan State team, and they only won that game by 3. Like,
that's a really good point. I want to go back to that when we go to our keys to the game, because I think that's a really good thing.
He's going to he's from a volume standpoint and a talent standpoint, he's going to get yards. Tech is not going to hold him to 25 yards. It's not going to hold him to 50 yards. He's going to get yards. He's a dude. Like, he's a dude.
Let's go to their defense, Sam. Last season, they were 20th in yards per play. We were 28th, but Rutgers was 20th. Much better than their offense. However, there were a few weaknesses. And if you look at their tackles for loss per game, it was at the bottom of college football. Their sacks per game, 111th in college football. Rush yards per game allowed. You think they have this great line and these great linebackers. 55th in yards per carry allowed. I might have said that wrong the first time, but yards per carry allowed 55th. 15th in red zone defense. So that's what that's what they did well last year. They were able to bend but not break, and maybe give up some runs here and there, but ultimately not let you score a ton when you got into the red zone. Their TD percentage was more middle of the road, but they, like, in their terms of total scores given up in the red zone, was very low. It's a veteran group, but two of their best players are in the NFL from last season, and that would be Max Melton and one of their linebackers is in the NFL. And then Torre was the guy that tore his ACL. No, didn't mean for that to almost be the same word, but yes, Torre tore his ACL. He is done for the year. He was one of their best linebackers. And Tyreem Powell has yet to play a game, one of their other top linebackers. I think he will play, but he's coming off an Achilles. He didn't play in the spring. He had a hand thing before that. So I don't think, even if Tyreem Powell plays, I don't think he's going to be 100%.
I mean, they were aiming for him to be ready for the season opener, and it didn't happen. And so I think he is not at 100%. He's a very, very good player, but he is not. This blanket statement, Rutgers is not at 100% defensively.
They're not.
No matter which angle you look at it from.
They've been playing different guys, and one of their DNs hasn't played. Flip Dixon was hurt for one game, but he did play against Akron. That's one of their safeties. They're still mixing and matching. Now, that doesn't mean they don't still have all those veterans. There's seniors up and down this defensive roster. And even without those two stud linebackers, they've got decent players. Daryl Jabome, I believe it is, has been stepping up. But against bad competition, he's had 9.5 tackles per game. The thing about their D-line that I noticed, Sam, is that both defensive tackles are gone from last year. And they haven't been tested against a Power 5 team yet up front. I think that's an area we can expose with drones, with Tootin. If you want to run inside, I don't think that this Rutgers D-line and defense that allowed, number 55 in yards per carry against, I don't think the D-line is as good as it was last year, particularly because they got guys out of the lineup.
No, it's definitely not. And some more advanced stats for Rutgers, even though they've only played Howard and Akron, they are 106th in the country in EPA per rush. That's expected points added per rush. If you aren't familiar with that stat, that means EPA is a way to contextualize yards gained. So if you gain 10 yards on, first down from your opponent's 15 and you get to the opponent's 5-yard line, that's a lot better than 10 yards from your own 20 to your own 30, right?
Yeah.
They are 106th in that metric in the country. They are also 99th in the country in opponent late down success rate. So that's third and fourth down defense. They're giving up a successful play, which would be converting a first down, 41.2% of the time. On the flip side of that, the Virginia Tech offense is 52nd in the country in late down success at 41.8% of the time. So if you put those two together, you're probably looking at the Hokies to be 40+% on third and fourth down in this game. That's pretty darn good. They were 8 of 18 last week against ODU, and that's a pretty good number. So I think that's an area that Tech can maybe try to stay on the field and tire out this defense that is a little bit beat up.
If any Rutgers fans are listening to this podcast, I do want to say that their safety group is pretty outstanding. They bring back Longer Beam, Dixon, Loyal, the star or the safety. I don't know what he is right now, but Igbinison. I'm not probably getting that quite right with the last name, but he's also back. They have guys, and I already said how old all of them are. They're all been super experienced. But let me make the point that will favor us because this is a Virginia Tech podcast. Both DTs are gone on the line from last year, and their ends have been banged up. So the DL is not as good as last year. Their two best linebackers are injured. Yes, one of them may play, and Deion Jennings, their leading tackler from last year, is in the NFL. So that unit, to me, is not as good as it was last year. Even if you're moving that one guy, Igbenino, whatever. Even if he is playing a technical linebacker at the star position, I don't think that unit's as good. And they lost Max Melton in the second round of the draft at CB. So yeah, their safeties are good, but their overall DB room, I'm not so sure that's better. Let's call it a wash.
Yeah.
Kyron in his first start, 274 yards of offense against this team. So I don't think the Rutgers defense, with the injuries they have, and even though they have all this experience coming back, I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago. We're at home. Kyron has a lot of experience now. We hopefully have just gotten back to the offense we want to run. That's what I'm hoping. I think we're going to do well up the middle with some runs, sprinkle in some passes. I think we're going to do well in this game.
Yeah, I'm oddly optimistic about this game, and I hate that. And I'm not usually a game-to-game optimistic person. And to the point where I don't want to give away prediction now, but like I personally bet Virginia Tech -3 in this game, and I rarely bet on the Hokies.
I love it.
Because I just think.
Is that the line right now? Is 3 the line right now?
It's actually I have it at 3. It's back to 3.5. It started at 5.5. So it's been up and down a bit. Taking off orange and maroon glasses, I don't like a team who has played 2 absolute not even cupcakes, cake pop teams. And then going on the road to play a good team. I don't like that.
I do like cake pops in general, though.
I do, except they're like $8 at Starbucks. Crazy. I don't
My
like
cousin
that.
makes them and they're phenomenal.
And
she actually went to Rutgers, so that's she's a baker of sorts. She came to the game with us last year. Melissa, shout out to Melissa, makes a delicious cake pop.
Hey, now I have a sweet tooth for the night. I don't like that because they're not going to know what they're good at and what they're not good at with this unit. They haven't been challenged. They don't have tape of them playing other good teams. And when they've played Rutgers, like they've had some bad moments. Like they had bad moments against Akron. And that's a bad Akron team who can't throw the ball against MAC competition. So of course they can't throw the ball against the Big Ten competition. And I also looked to what this Rutgers team did last season, and they got off to a really good start. They were 4-1. Their only loss was to Michigan, and who cares? Everyone got crushed by Michigan last year. But after they played Tech, they got crushed by Michigan. They played Wagner at home, and then they lost to a pretty mediocre Wisconsin team by 11 points. They barely beat Michigan State, took care of Indiana. They lost by 3+ scores to Ohio State. They
were actually in that Ohio State game in the first half.
They were
playing them tough.
19-point game, but they played them well.
And we had a 19-point game against this team.
They got blanked by Iowa 22-0. Penn State beat them 27-6. Maryland beat them 42-24.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anytime they played a good team, they kind of got beat.
Yeah.
Like they lost to the 6 best teams they played by a mile. And then they played the bowl game and they beat Miami by 7. Congratulations. Miami was playing like their 4th string quarterback. And the game was played in a baseball stadium. I don't count games that are played in baseball stadiums.
Yeah. Listen, in this game, defensively for the Hokies, it comes down to one thing, and that's stopping the run. It's so simple. It's a simple idea, easier said than done, but sell out against Monarchs and that offensive line. Play man. The linebackers got to step up. They got to step up. The D-line has to step up, and we need to stop this kid. You need to wrap the hell up. That's really what this is, because last year, that's what killed us in this game. And so if you can do that, I really like that. I feel like we found, and I'm harping on this young kid, but like that will linebacker spot is so important. And if Woodson is what I think that he's going to be, this is a breakout game opportunity. It really is. When on offense, Sam, for us, what are the keys?
I think it's just stay on schedule. I think we really want these explosive plays sometimes, but let them come to you. I think this Tech team is at their best when they're running the ball with Kyron and Tootin. Those two together, they're both a rushing threat. And then in the passing game, they're sticking between that, 5 to 15 yards downfield. And then you go deep on the play action. And then you run the screen when the defense is backed off. Like, set up plays on offense. I think in the Marshall game specifically, it's like they weren't setting up plays. It's like they were coming out, Marshall was in press coverage, and they were like, let's run a wide receiver screen. Or they were coming up and they had, thrown the ball 2 straight times. It's 3rd and 6, and they're like, what if we did play action here? Like, nobody's expecting you to run the ball anyways. I think if they just set up this offense, it's kind of a machine. Like, they're pretty darn good.
And
if they're not shooting themselves in the foot.
Agreed. This could be a huge Kyron run game. That's kind of what Kyron. That's what I want. I want to have him running down the middle. We saw against Marshall, those inside zone plays work so well. I want to see a ton of that in this game. And we saw Lane coming out of the slot, playing whatever position he plays, have a great game against ODU. I think in this game, the yards for the wide receivers are going to come on the outside because their safety is their strength. I think CB is a little bit weaker. If Ali is feeling good, let's have the big game for Ali Jennings. Let's have it. Let's have it here. Now, I want it to be playing off the run, but one of these receivers on the outside is going to have a good game, and it could be him. It could be Felton. And to your point earlier, like going all the way back to what you said about Monangai, he's going to get yards. He's going to get a touchdown. Like, that is going to happen. We're going to give up yards. We need to outscore them. I know that sounds so simple, like, you score more points, you win the game.
Yeah.
But no, like the offense cannot go quiet for a half. Like, that cannot happen in this game because Rutgers is going to score points. You have to keep scoring. And unlike, at first over the summer, I thought it would be a rock fight. Rock fight implies like 13-10. That's not what I'm thinking in this one.
I have a score prediction. It's not 13-10. The over-under for this game is set at 45.5 right now. It opened up at 45 and a half. It's at 44 now, so it's dropped a little bit. There's a fair amount of energy on Rutgers for this game. I think there is an idea that Rutgers is this darling team of the Big Ten. I think there's a lot of college football personalities that really like Rutgers. This is a big spot for Virginia Tech because there are people who are nationally relevant pundits that are against Tech right now. Not in a, they hate Virginia Tech way, but there's a lot of people who are calling out Brent Pry. There's a lot of people calling out this Tech team. This is a big spot for Virginia Tech. It might not be the marquee game of the week. It might be on ACC Network, but this is a game that people are going to pay attention to the result. And if you lose here, if you're Tech, you're 2-2 heading to South Florida. That's not good. If you win as Virginia Tech, you're actually feeling pretty good. It's a big, big game. And then for Rutgers, going down to Lane Stadium and getting wins still means something.
It does.
And it would be a big step for their program to have back-to-back wins against Virginia Tech. And if you're Brent Pry, you're telling your guys, this is a really big game. It might not look like a big game on the schedule, but this is a really, really big game.
It is. And I think the home field crowd, to your point, playing in Lane Stadium is going to be the difference. You hinted at it. I think we need a great performance from Kyron. This is on the heels of what we just saw. If he takes that confidence and parlays it into this game, the crowd and him will help us get this win. And he's going to be sore after this one. He just is. Because that's a punishing defense with a lot of big dudes on it. And I know they've been dealing with some injuries, but don't make no mistake. They got guys on that defensive side of the ball, and Monangai is a beast as well. So this would mean a lot. I mean, Bud Elliott's been calling us out among many others. We lose the Power 5 game, Power 4 game down at Vanderbilt. This would make up for that in my eyes, because some people saw this as a loss this year with Vanderbilt as a win. Let's flip it on its head. Let's get this win. Let's put a bunch of those streaks away. We win 3 games in a row. We beat a power conference team out of conference. I feel pretty good, Sam. I feel like we're going to do enough. Even though I've seen some bad shit in the first halves of games, I feel pretty good about this.
Well, on the other hand, like they went completely cold in the second quarter. They still won that game by 3 scores.
Still covered the spread. Yeah.
They were horrendous in the first half of the Marshall game. They still won it by 3 scores.
Yeah.
They played the absolute worst half of football I have seen from Virginia Tech since the Duke game with Justin Fuente at night. I'm serious. That was the worst half of football I've seen from a Tech team in a very long time.
Should I bring up the Georgia State loss? The win.
They probably,
I'm sorry for Vanderbilt. I mean,
2 games of film on that offense will do that to you.
Oh my god,
they're a one-trick pony. I think Tech was actually.
We knew that loss was bad, and we're
Yeah.
an hour and 15 minutes in. We're gonna do some picks and get out of here. But like, we knew the Vanderbilt loss was bad. It's just as bad as we thought. That team is not very good. And to your point, Sam, we played horrible in that first half.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we've put it behind us. Do you want to do picks?
Let's go for it, dude.
All right.
Let's go for it.
NC State at Clemson. Clemson, 17.5-point favorites. That is the line on our pick'em. 17.5 in Death Valley. Sam, what you got?
If it's only 17.5, give me Clemson. If the 19.5, 20.5 that are being floated around now, I would maybe take NC State. I'm not betting that game, though. Freshman quarterback going into Death Valley. I don't like that. I also think Clemson might terrorize that NC State offensive line to the point where like NC State might only score like 10 points.
Clemson's going to cover that 17.5. JMU at UNC. Be careful, UNC. Be very careful. UNC 9.5-point favorites at home.
Yeah, this is.
Do you want me to go first? Or sorry,
you go first. You go first.
I'm going to take JMU to cover.
I'm going to take JMU to cover. And UNC is moving to a 2-quarterback system. JMU played really poorly in their FCS game against like Gardner Webb or somebody.
They did not play good. No.
I think they're going to bounce back here. So I think UNC wins the game, but I think JMU keeps it close.
JMU always punches up in these games. Mm-hmm. GT at Louisville, one of the best games in the ACC this year, maybe, and especially this weekend. Louisville, 9.5-point favorites at home. I am fascinated by this game, Sam.
I would not bet this game in 100 years, but I think it is really fascinating because much like Rutgers, Louisville is a team who came in with a little bit of hype, a bit of returning production. They have not played diddly squat to start the year. Georgia Tech has been tested. They've played at Syracuse. They've played Florida State, who at least physically will test you. So I think this is a really interesting game. Georgia Tech usually plays really well in these games, though. So we'll see.
Georgia Tech also beat that Georgia State team that beat Vanderbilt. So I'm going to take Georgia Tech to cover. Miami at USF. 17.5-point underdogs for the home team. The difference is this is another NFL stadium. Both of these teams play in NFL stadiums. This one's at Raymond James. I like USF, but I also can see the other side of it where Miami just comes out and just wrecks shop. But I'm going to take USF.
I think if I was betting the points, I would take USF. But what scares me here is the line of scrimmage. Alabama started to lean on South Florida towards the end of that game, and they just didn't have any more energy left. I could see the same thing happening. Alabama scored 28 points in that fourth quarter to pull away in that one. I could see a similar script in this game, but if I had to bet, I would bet South Florida.
And then the perhaps biggest game of the weekend, Tennessee at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 7.5-point underdogs at home. You don't see too many Norman lines that are a home dog.
I'm not betting against Oklahoma at home.
Me and Rob disagreed on this. I'm taking Tennessee. I feel like they are. I know like their competition hasn't been amazing. I know they played NC State but NC State has massive offensive line problems, and that played into Tennessee's strength. But you know who else has offensive line problems? Oklahoma.
Yeah. This is a spot bet for me. It's another game I'm staying away from, to be honest, because I can see both sides of it so
staying
clearly.
Away from it, except for the pick 'em where you have to pick it.
Yes, that is true. The spot says Oklahoma to cover by a touchdown. It's Nico's first true road game, and he's playing in one of the Oklahoma at home is one of the surest fire bets of the last like decade.
Yeah.
Like it's a really tough place to play. I think Oklahoma has been tested enough to feel like they know what they're good at. They know what they're not good at. I don't think Tennessee knows what they're not good at yet. And if you make one mistake in that environment, Nico misses one read, or you throw in one package that worked really well against Kent State, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, that could give the momentum to the Sooners, and that could start. Yeah, that could start something. So
we've seen teams come out on fire for the first 3-4 weeks and then fall on their face. Like we see it every year. And so could that be Tennessee in this game? I don't think it's going to be, but Nico, to your point, hasn't exactly been the reason they've been so amazing.
He hasn't had to be. Like he hasn't really done anything. Like he didn't do much against NC State. He obviously didn't do a lot against Kent State. I think this is a really, really tough spot for your first true road game. Like I think they would love playing at Kentucky this week.
It absolutely is, but he can lean on that run game, and we'll see how he performs. I also heard the thing about what they were saying on the Cover 3, in that Oklahoma's biggest game every year typically is the Red River rivalry, and that's in a neutral site. They don't get a lot of these like massive games where they're not favored in their house, and it's their first SEC game. So they are going to be jacked up beyond belief for this game.
And there's this idea that they're like off to a bad start this season. They're 3-0. And they've beaten a Big 12 team, and they've beaten a good Tulane team.
The Houston game is what people are pointing
at.
It's
bad. It's bad. Like they haven't been great, but it's not like.
But they won. They
calm
still
down,
won.
People. You don't have to win every game by 40.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Tennessee. I think you're taking Oklahoma, and we'll disagree on that, same as Rob and me. But we'll go from there. The other games we're keeping an eye on: USC at Michigan. What an awesome game! Now Michigan is not what we thought maybe before this season. They're 5.5-point underdogs at home. Utah at Oklahoma State. This is an awesome game. Oklahoma State, a home dog right now. I see it at plus 1.5 for Oklahoma State. They could definitely win that game outright. Like if you're betting OK State, you're probably betting money line.
Yeah, if you're betting them, bet money line. That's going to be a really good game. Both teams have strengths. Both teams have weaknesses. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. As for USC, Michigan, I just don't see how Michigan can score enough points to keep up with USC. Like I think a bad offensive outing for USC, even against that Michigan defense, is like 27, 28 points. I don't think Michigan can score that.
Yeah.
Even against USC. Like this is a much, much improved USC defense. Give me the Trojans in this one. I think it's going to be very similar to the Texas game, where it's just the speed and the outside talent overtake Michigan.
I just don't think Michigan's going to be able to keep up at all. Like that. That's the problem. Is offensively they're not going to be able to score very well. I'm going to run through these ACC games. I got 4 of them on the list here that we haven't covered. TCU at SMU. SMU 2.5-point dogs in the battle for the iron skillet, not cast iron, just iron skillet.
Iron skillet.
I think SMU is going to get that win. I feel like they're going to figure something out this weekend, and they're going to end up winning that game. And let me do the rest of them, Sam, and then you give me your opinion. Cal at FSU. FSU 2.5-point favorites is what I'm seeing. That has been memed to no end. I think I like Cal in that one. Michigan State at BC. BC 7-point favorites. I don't think BC will cover. I think they'll get the win. And then Stanford at Q's. Q's 9.5-point favorites. I hope Q's wins that game. That's what they should.
Yeah, Syracuse is going to win that game. Give me until FSU can get out of their own way. Give me Cal.
Cal's a decent team, man. I'm surprised FSU's favored.
They're good. Boston College playing at home at night, red bandana game against a freshman quarterback.
Oh, that's the red bandana?
Redshirt freshman quarterback. Yeah.
I might take them to cover.
Who throws a lot of interceptions. Give me the Eagles in that one. And then I love to say trap game, but Syracuse doesn't lose until October. So
That's true.
give me Syracuse.
They're going to go 6-0. I mean, that's just what they're going to do. Okay, that'll do it for the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, watching. I think we're going to come out on Saturday, and me and Sam have been talking about how close we are. We're this close, man. We're this close.
30-21.
He dropped the score prediction, 30-21.
Big game from John Love.
John Love. Oh.
Yeah.
So maybe some red zone failures, but we're going to capitalize with some field goals.
I think it is. Rutgers is going to play bend don't break defense on us, and I think they're going to pop off some big runs. But at the end of the day, Tech has more successful offensive drives than Rutgers does.
I won't give a score prediction, but I will say I've got the silver VT. I've got this VT. You can see the orange VT right behind me, and then I've got the hat VT. A lot of VTs. Stone by Stone. I like that one. What is that for?
ACC championship.
Nice. Which
Sure.
Women or men?
Men's.
Okay.
I think.
It's hard. Yeah, because it was 2022.
men's.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, men's.
I like that one.
We're just such a successful basketball program, P. I just forget which one it is.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've we're a basketball school, Sam, as they say. 1-8 is Brent Pry in one-score games. If it comes down to that, if it comes down to one score, I think we're gonna come out on top. We're gonna win 3 in a row. We're gonna get a one-score game win, and we're gonna beat a power team from another conference. That's what's all gonna happen. We're gonna put all those streaks to bed.
Yes.
And until next
Sure.
time, go Hokies.